What do you genuinely think will happen in the USA if Roe versus Wade is overturned? It'll go to the states. And then we can start having this argument all over again 50 times over. Nothing will change for people who can afford to travel to states, countries where it is legal. Business as usual. But for those that can't, more poverty. More unwanted kids who grow up in poverty and possibly abused and neglected. The return of unwanted children and subsequent explosion of crime 16-20 years later. It will affect poor people the most. Middle-class people will still be able to other states. Perhaps condom sales will skyrocket. Red states will ban abortion and people will go to blue states for abortions. Backroom abortions, dead women, abandoned children, increased poverty, day trips to Canada. Besides the already stated explosion of crime due in 20 years. We're going to see a lot more dead women, as if we needed it. Some from suicide. Some from botched jobs from a doctor. Some will be killed by their partners not wanting to be a dad. One major issue that's often overlooked is medical care for pregnant women who miscarry, even those who wanted to keep the baby. Abortion bans often include any removal of living fetuses, even if they are brain-dead or slowly dying. But until its heart stops, the mother has to keep that dead baby in her, risking sepsis and tons of physical, emotional pain. Women have died because doctors didn't want to cross that technical line. Red states will get redder and blue states will get bluer because states will decide their abortion policy and some people will move accordingly. You will never end abortion, only safe abortion. The jails will fill up with offenders along with other non-violent marijuana, criminals, and the private prison industry, who've been orchestrating this all along through organized religion, will laugh all the way to the bank. All in the name of righteousness and the Lord. People keep mentioning that women will die because of back alley abortions, but nobody is mentioning the amount of women that will die because they can't afford to go to the hospital. Childbirth in humans is actually extremely risky. It costs an average of $20,000 without insurance. Those who cannot afford to travel for abortions, likely don't have insurance. Since they can't afford a hospital, they'll be forced to do risky at-home births, which will likely kill both the women and the child in the end. Everyone who is anti-abortion should work for a year in our foster care system. Many women will have unsafe abortions, which could end up killing them. I am still just blown away that we're all having to have this conversation. They'll move on to gutting Obergefell. It's going to signal a bunch of states to run other things up to the Supreme Court like gay marriage. Expect a giant run on reducing the rights of all kinds of people. It blows my mind that the prospect of overturning Roe versus Wade is occurring during the same timeline as the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. We're discovering that literal US presidents, British royalty, and CEOs the world's most powerful have a penchant for child sex trafficking, the nature of which relies upon a large pool of destitute children and parents, and we're considering abolishing the very practice that reduces the number of unwanted children and burdened parents in the world. I can't see past it. The two go hand in hand. Black market abortifacients will become widely available. One-stop shopping for weed, meth, blow and now RU-486. Crime in about 12-15 years will jump. Many of the abortions car poverty-stricken women in situations and locations who don't have proper support to raise what would be traditionally defined as upstanding citizens. When those children become of age to commit crime for survival they will. That's one theory, from Freakonomics, as to why the 90s were lower crime. After Roe and the infrastructure for more reproductive healthcare options became available, many of those who would have grown up in conditions leading to crime were simply not there. Most significantly, we lose all confidence in the Supreme Court as even a somewhat impartial institution. If any and all laws can be overturned or replaced based simply on which party picked the judges, we're well and truly fucked. The point is not about the fetus or babies or any of that. That is just the window dressing. The point is to control women by making them a second-class citizen that does not have the inherent right of privacy and bodily autonomy. That is what Roe v. Wade protects. That cannot be at all limited or regulated without violating these rights. A corpse has more right to its organs, you cannot take them without permission. You can't force a person to donate them when living, or even to give blood. But for some reason, all that protection vanishes when it is a woman's body. Are we not human beings with our own rights? Are we not equal under the eyes of the law? A lot of women about to become Satanist because of the religious exemption. Going to get ready for teen suicide rates to rise as people shuffle botched abortions into that category because of personal responsibility. Abortions won't stop. But safe abortions will. Immigration between states. Some people will leave a state that has abortion policies they don't agree with. States become more polarized. Protests and more protests. Probably massive protests, and maybe liberals will start voting again, instead of sitting home. Several states will fully outlaw abortion immediately. People will begin traveling across state lines to get abortions. We'll see more and more fundraisers to cover travel costs for rape victims. Wealthy, born-again, right-to-life Christians will step up to the plate and adopt the children that are now forced to be born and provide them a great life. A million times. Possibly more tragic, horrific cases like Jerry Santoro, NSFL, in 1964 before Roe. When people say the Supreme Court would be giving the choice back to the people, they'd actually be taking the choice away from people and giving it to state governments. Higher rates of suicide in women, dead babies in dumpsters, increase in homelessness, increase in child abuse, women trapped in marriages, women coerced into bad marriages, increase in domestic violence. Oh yes, increase in homicide. The number one cause of death in pregnant women is murder. The same people who currently are fighting against Roe will start fighting against Griswold versus Connecticut, the decision that made birth control legal. It's not like right-wing fanatics are ever going to stop. A lot of women will die. Republicans will get bolder and try to pass laws in red states challenging things like gay marriage or access to birth control. An initial frenzy of outrage, followed by a series of dramatic state-level legislative and legal battles as each state updates its laws. When the dust settles, we will have a state-by-state patchwork, which is the constitutionally correct answer. Most states will allow abortion in at least some circumstances. Pro-choice groups will finance the transportation of poor women seeking abortions to more abortion-friendly jurisdictions. There will be no significant increase in abortion-related deaths. Hospitals already at capacity and flooded with COVID patients would now also have to deal with women who took lethal doses of chemicals or became septic from botched, medically unsupervised abortions. Women will die from unsafe abortions. Children will be forced to give birth to children. Incest and rape victims will be forced to give birth. Unwanted children will be abused and go hungry. Just awful shit pretty much. I think you'll see further economic depression in the states which ban abortions. Increased poverty, lower state GDPs, worsening education systems and more crime. There better be fucking riots until the system is overhauled because 6/9 judges were appointed by presidents that did not win the popular vote. This is not for the people, by the people. Red states will get poorer and continue to drain federal welfare programs, all while complaining that the blue states who actually fund the government are welfare states. If they overturn Roe v. Wade, it is only the beginning of the country living under more religious rules. It'll be like Poland, or Liechtenstein, or Ireland before it was legalized. We continue our backslide with zero pushback. People are too consumed with entertaining themselves than dealing with reality. Put a fork in America, it's done. Hopefully the majority will lose their collective minds and fight to have it reinstated. The U.S. is obsessed with unborn children and couldn't give two shits after it's born. Back alley abortions will become more common. Highly justified large protests nationwide, seriously sick and/or dying women. An increase in Americans getting passports so they can go to Mexico or Canada to get the reproductive health options they should already have access to in the greatest country on earth. Either a couple of things. 1. Have the kid and care for it and not be able to because they don't have money. 2. More kids are put into foster, adoption care. 3. They leave the country to get an abortion. Probably a lot more options besides the ones I listed. Read the excerpts of what happened during Prohibition. Basically, exactly that. In about 10 years it will become obvious that it was a really, really horrible idea. Thousands of women are going to be arrested and spend decades in prison because of ending a pregnancy even if they are raped by their father, uncle, brother, stranger. I feel so bad for the women in this country. But this is Murica, where at least you know you are free. We are run by truly awful and evil people, SCOTUS, MAGAs, Christian fundamentalists, evangelicals, dominionists, Republicans. This will be buried, but here goes. In addition to all of the above, birth control and IVF will also be targeted, as the religious fruitcakes that have pushed the forced pregnancy movement also see those as abortifacients and murder. Additionally, because Roe v. Wade also protects medical privacy, your medinfo may no longer be protected. There is also a growing worry that if Roe v. Wade is struck down or gutted, so can other landmark cases protecting things like same-sex marriage and other recent social issues. This is bigger than just Roe v. Wade, and it is terrifying. If I have an ectopic pregnancy, I'm afraid there will be too much red tape and I'll die before they get permission to do surgery. Ectopic pregnancies are 100% fatal. I don't intend to die because of a man with a first-grade knowledge of sex ed. More back alley abortions and women dying. This is why Roe v. Wade ruling has always made sense. Abortions happen anyway. Want a doctor performing a medical procedure, or someone who doesn't know what they're doing? Disproportionately affects poor, as always. It's popular enough and Trump's judges are questionable enough that we might see widespread demonstrations and demands for our elected officials to act. What would that look like? Packing the bench, most likely. BTW, if Biden wants something to make his popularity soar, let Roe fall. He swoops in as the savior of what is demonstrably popular opinion.